Welcome to the class where tech takes the lead. Adam Todd here with just what you need. Teachers everywhere, let's elevate the game. With digital tools, we'll never be the same. In this podcast, we'll uncover the trends, from apps to gadgets on which we depend. Connect with your students in ways so fresh, innovative minds put to the test. In this podcast, we'll uncover the trends, from apps to gadgets on which we depend. Connect with your students in ways so fresh, innovative minds put to the test. Classroom dynamics where we all unite. Education future shining bright, with Adam Todd guiding us through. Teachers paradise coming true.
Classroom Dynamics is supported by Logitech. As education continues to evolve, so does Logitech Education, your partner in content creation for the classroom. With Logitech's cutting-edge technology, students not only learn but also become content creators. Whether it's in person or online, Logitech's tools are designed to inspire educators and learners alike. Capture every educational moment in stunning detail and edit, produce, and share your creative journey with ease. Logitech Education, inspiring the next generation of creators. For more, visit logitech.com/education, transforming classrooms one innovation at a time. Welcome to Classroom Dynamics, the podcast where we unlock the future of education. Hi everybody, I'm your host Adam Todd, and on the show today we're looking at how we can prepare students for a future that's changing at a rate that we've never seen before. Now, many educators follow a traditional path to teaching. Steven Iglesias, however, took a very different route. From baseball coach to security guard, then teacher to administrator, his journey took a sharp turn when he discovered the power of exponential technologies. Now he's on a mission to be the disruptor in education by preparing students and educators for a world that's changing faster than ever. From robotics and cybersecurity to AI and esports design, Steven builds hands-on learning spaces and future-ready programs that equip students to shape the future. He works with schools, districts, and edtech leaders to drive innovation where it matters most, inside the classroom. Because let's face it, in today's world, staying ahead isn't an option anymore. It's a necessity. How we stay ahead and how we prepare students is going to be the key. And that's what we're talking about today. And it's all coming up next on Classroom Dynamics. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. AI can save teachers time, but what if it could do more? With Your Way, AI is built specifically for your school or district, aligning cutting-edge technology with your instructional goals, strategies, and vision. Empower teachers to personalize instruction, create engaging lessons, and implement innovative practices, all while saving time for what matters most. Why settle for one-size-fits-all AI? Customize and build your way safely and seamlessly. Discover AI that works your way at yourwaylearning.com. Steven Iglesias didn't take the traditional path into education. He forged his own path. From coach and security guard to educator and innovator, he now equips students and schools with the tools to thrive in a world driven by exponential technologies. Whether it's AI, robotics, or cybersecurity, Steven designs future-ready programs and learning spaces that bring real-world tech into the classroom. Today, we're jumping feet first into his mission to transform education for the next generation. So, Steven, welcome to the show. So glad to have you on Classroom Dynamics.
Adam, thank you for having me. Super excited.
So you call yourself, I love this, you call yourself an educational disruptor. I love that title. What does that actually mean to you? And why do you think disruption is so necessary in today's education system?
Sure. So I actually, as much as people say that I'm a disruptor and that I innovate and we created everything we've created here at Doral Academy, I don't think I'm doing anything crazy special. I literally look at what's happening in the real world and I just copy paste and bring it down to these kids. There's a gentleman by the name of Palmer Luckey that was on this YouTube with Peter Diamandis. He's actually the guy that developed the Oculus Quest and then sold it to Meta, and then now he has Anduril, tech defense company, which is super cool. But he's on the podcast with Peter, and they're talking about how we always tell our kids they got to follow their passions and follow their dreams. And then he looks at Peter and he goes, but what if today they have really crappy passions?
Mm.
And the reality is that 60 Minutes did a study in this country, and they found that over 70% of the kids ages 14 and under, their dreams are being YouTubers and TikTokers. And they took
Right.
that same study in China, and they want to be engineers and entrepreneurs and physicists and things that are building and creating things for society.
Right. That is amazing. That's a big flip.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you think about, like, when you look at the space race, when you look back in the days, who are champions of society? It were the astronauts. It was the physicists. That was the single focus. And I think that's something schools need to back and, champion the entrepreneurs, champion the folks that are really creating things that are meaningful to society.
Right. And if you look back to those days, even the technology was becoming the forefront of why those kids looked up to those kind of people and to do those kind of things. So I think that's just, you hit it the nail on the head right there. So what exactly, you talk about exponential technologies. What exactly is the meaning behind exponential technologies?
So exponential tech is anything that's growing at an exponential rate. When you look at, back in the 60s, when the computers in the 70s, you had the microchip, right? And you had the exponential growth because of that. And you had Moore's law, that the compute power compounded doubled pretty much every 2 years. Where now we're at a doubling point in technology because they're converging in all different fields, from AI to quantum to cyber. I mean, to you name it. Now even biomedical engineering is becoming technology focused and based. It's moving at light speed, and we're at these doubling points and compounding points where we only comprehend things linearly, and we really can't comprehend what that doubling power is. I mean, Einstein said it's the most powerful, compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe, right? That's the sense of urgency that we need to introduce and expose these kids to the exponential technologies.
So we're talking dramatic increases in capabilities within the classroom and life for that matter, and that consequential impact on our everyday.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's happening in every industry. Multiple technologies are converging in every industry at the same time, and so that's why you're seeing this compound and doubling effect. And as far as, like, for example, AI, right? Though there's two buckets I look at AI in, and all the other technologies should have the same approach. AI is creating a new operating system that we're going to have to function to live in our everyday life. So we're going to have to become consumers and operators of using AI on a daily basis,
Mhm.
right? Then there's the other bucket where now I'm developing, now I'm creating, now I'm building and using this technology to solve an actual real world problem. And so those two buckets, for the most part, up until this point, you had your computer science and your coders. That was the technology. Those were the developers. But now we're at a point where even leaders need to understand where this technology is going. And so something I've been talking about a lot lately is, much like we developed a growth mindset, how do we develop an AI mindset? What are the frameworks? Because there's so much going on. What are these mindset shifts that we have to make in our everyday lives to learn this new operating system?
It's a great point. You recently, and this is something you touched upon already, but I want to get into it a little bit more. You recently had a really interesting post on X that read, and I'll quote it: "Want to know why your kids dream of being YouTubers instead of engineers? Our schools are stuck in the past while the job market races toward 2030. That is profound, right? Because 2030 is not that far away. You're talking about 5 years from now. So with that said, what are schools getting wrong, and how do we even attempt to fix it on this level?
I think there's two things. I think number one, schools losing purpose, and the reason I say that is because they're going through the system, they're doing everything. A lot of them are doing things by the book and doing it very well, and they're getting out to the real world, and it's everything. They were kind of sold on an empty bag of chips. I ran into this guy that built this company, and he was valedictorian of his school, got a full scholarship to Stanford, did his master's in dual major in 5 years. Went to his first job interview at Microsoft and was waiting his $350,000 salary. And when they told him, "Hey, listen, this is the most unbelievable resume we've ever come across, but we're actually looking for somebody with a little bit more experience." Everybody in the room, like, how the heck was I supposed to get experience? I was top of my class. I was an athlete. I was this. I was that. I did everything by the book. And now you're telling me I got to turn around and go get experience? There's an issue. There's something wrong. So I think
Yeah.
number one purpose, I think the world is changing and academics hasn't. I mean, if you look at the way cars have come and developed over the last 100 years, if you look at cell phones, or not even cell phones, from telephones all the way to cell phones, to, everything has evolved. If you look at the classroom, for the most part, it's the same.
Same old, same old.
It hasn't evolved. And so I think the lack of purpose it is a big thing, and I think the private sector too is demanding it. They're at a point where, especially in these technology fields, they're saying we can no longer wait 4 or 5 years to wait to get these kids, because by the time they get to us, we still have to retrain them because everything they just learned is obsolete.
Right.
And so there's a new model, there's a new design that needs that we need to plan for to get these students ready for the workforce.
Do you think things are happening so fast at such a rate here that that's the problem? Because it almost feels like teachers are running into a wall all the time. Something's changing really literally in front of them, right before their eyes. The way they're teaching it, they might be tweaking it a little bit, introducing a little technology, doing that kind of, maybe content creation that goes along with it, but not, and then they're falling behind again because something else is coming out. Do you think the rate is just so fast that teachers don't even know what to do with it anymore?
Yeah, I mean, me myself, that I think I'm pretty up to speed with the industry. I even have a hard time keeping up. So for myself, that's something honestly that keeps me up at night. Like, how do I keep up? And I'm a little bit further along than most in the K-12 space, because I follow the tech, I follow the private sector in the industry and where it's going. And honestly, they can't even comprehend it. They,
Right.
they say all this is happening, but they don't know what that happening is going to be or when it's going to be. The other thing I think, the second part of my purpose, the lack of purpose, is also the lack of KPI. And what I mean by that is we're measuring the wrong things. We're still measuring rote memorization. We're still measuring, what they know about the information or what information they know, and instead of the know-how or what to do with what they know, right? And so until we get some incentives for schools to adapt, it's going to be very far and few. I think now you'll have, some competition because of school choice, and states that have school choice where, to differentiate themselves, they'll have to do some innovative things and get into these robotics and AI and different, core subjects. But until from the top down we see, hey, it's like in China, it's mandate. They're going to mandate now AI even as young as elementary, AI literacy. And so I think that's where we need to move to. But I think it's okay, because as long as we know that it is moving fast and we need to continue to adapt, that's something that we need to work on for sure.
There's a wild stat floating around that 80% of the jobs our kids are going to have in 10 years don't even exist yet. That's hard to fathom, right? That's hard to fathom on so many levels. So how should schools be preparing students for a future that we can't even fully predict or even begin to even wrap our minds around? That's crazy. That's 80% of the jobs. Can you imagine?
Yeah, so that's a scary thing, right? Every year I start the year in all of our technology courses, I walk into the classes and I tell them that, over 80% of the jobs you're going to have don't exist today. But if you think about it, like, what was a social media manager 3 years ago? What was a full stack developer, a crypto analyst, right? These jobs just continue to stack on. And now the latest talk is, automation and robotics are going to take over, endless amount of jobs, but it's also going to create a lot of jobs. In the 80s, a lot of folks thought the ATM machine was going to completely replace and displace the teller, the bank teller. And it actually did the opposite. It created more bank teller jobs because they needed to open more banks and locations. The bank teller role shifted a little bit. They did different things, but it created, and robotics and automation they're going to do the same thing.
Right. I think, when you think about the future, things are always going to change a little bit, right? You're going to, one thing's going to become a little bit older. Some things are going to just morph into something else. But the future of jobs, even though you might be losing, maybe 10 different kinds of jobs, you're going to gain maybe 20 different kind of jobs because of that.
Yeah. And we're not going totally into the blind. We kind of know the big pillars. We know that things are going to be digital, right? So kids are going to have to know computational science, and they're going to have to know digital literacy, AI literacy now, right? We know that they're going to have to be resilient. That's something I really see a lack in this generation. There's multiple reasons as to why. But if you look at the students that, for example, are athletes, those kids are way more resilient than your regular kid that does just an academic kid that doesn't do anything out of the ordinary. And so in these programs in AI and cyber and robotics, and we need to help build that resilience through them, because like you said, we don't know where the future is. It could be in the next 2 to 3 years about AI, but there may be a shift into biomedical engineering, or maybe a shift into another industry. Kids are going to have to learn to adapt and to be resilient. So these programs, these project-based programs where students are actually learning how to use technology to solve a real-world problem, these kids are building these skills that are so many other skills that are essential to success in the real world: your communication, your project management, your resilience, because things are going to go wrong, things are not going to go as planned. And so when we build these classes and programs mimicking the real world as much as possible, that's something the teacher plays a vital role in becoming that project manager and becoming that assistant in the classroom, and not just the sage on the stage.
Do you think it's the teacher who's more veteran ended, or the teacher who is more of that newer variety rookie style that's going to be able to do that? Because I can see some of the older teachers saying, I don't know, I'm a little afraid of it. And I could see some of the younger, newer teachers saying, hey, I could do this. This is going to be great. I could foresee this. Well, how do you break that down?
I think the answer is both. I think it's the teacher that has the right mindset. And that's one of agility. That's one of resilience. That's one of somebody that's trying to constantly have a growth mindset and see what's happening in the field to bring that, to the classroom every day. For example, we just started a class in AI this year. And this class is for a group of students they're going under the hood to learn about what AI is, what machine learning is, what algorithms. And now they're at the point, they've done the theory part. Now they're at the point where they are actually building applications using AI. Now that our teacher went through the kind of almost the full year building this course, he's already planning for next year how to cut those timeframes down to where they're actually building sooner, because the AI industry has changed. So having somebody with the mindset of that constant iteration to bring what's happening in the real world to these kids is of utter importance.
We are just getting started. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about embracing the future. More with Steven Iglesias, so stay with us. Looking for the ultimate laptop protection? The Higher Ground Gear Shuttle 3.0 CS keeps your device safe, cool, and secure wherever you go. With its always-on design, your laptop stays protected at all times, while Clean Shell technology makes cleaning easy. The cooling deck prevents overheating, and the shock-absorbing corners, stiff EVA shell, and non-slip bottom ensure top-tier durability. Are you on the go a lot? Well, the carry handle and optional shoulder strap make it easy to grab and go. Plus, it's mil-spec certified, so you know it's built to last. Upgrade to the Higher Ground Gear Shuttle 3.0 CS today, because your tech deserves higher ground. Visit hggear.com to learn more. Teachers, podcasters, and classroom creators, take your content to the next level with Logitech Education. Whether you're recording a student-led podcast, creating engaging lesson videos, or producing professional quality classroom content, Logitech has the tools you need. With crystal clear cameras, studio quality microphones, perfect lighting solutions, and seamless editing gear, their full portfolio of content creation solutions empowers educators and inspires students. Bring professional-grade production into your classroom today. Visit logitech.com/education to learn more. You've built programs in AI, robotics, esports, and cybersecurity, areas that many schools still hesitate to embrace. What do you think is holding them back? Is it the lack of knowledge on those subjects? And what are your messages to administrators who are afraid to take that leap?
Yeah, so I going back to what I said earlier, I think number one, until we get the policy to make schools and kind of measure schools based on, what kind of STEM courses are they giving, how they're doing, integrating technology and their future readiness overall, I don't think we'll see a strong push other than because of the school choice. But number two, I think I think as a leader, you get intimidated. If I'm having a hard time finding a math teacher, how the heck am I going to find a cyber teacher? How the heck am I going to find a robotics teacher? Right. And robotics, if you ask I laugh when I say this, because if you ask anybody in the K-12 space what technology is, the only thing they're going to tell you is robotics, right? That's because everything is about these games and playing these games. And that's for the majority of all these technology electives. I think that's for the most part what the thought process is about getting the kids excited to play games. We take an approach where I think it's much more purposeful, where we get kids thinking about, okay, how can I use technology to actually solve a real world problem? And that's whether it's computer science, whether it's robotics, whether it's video game design or anything like that, because now they're building something that's meaningful, something that they can hold there as their own. And so as a leader, that's intimidating. I think one of the biggest issues in this progress moving forward with technology also is you have these unbelievable leaders that they don't understand the tech and how it's really changing everything, not only in education, in the real world. But if we don't start exposing these kids now, those kids in the future, like when they get into the workforce, they're going to be so far behind. We talk about the digital divide, right? Everybody thought the digital divide was getting a kid a laptop and getting them access to the internet, right? Well, now with AI, those that know how to use AI versus those that don't, that gap is going to be enormous.
It is. I've seen such a change just in the last few years of what I've been teaching, adding more content creation in, adding more animation in, adding in more of the just taking what you're doing in a real world classroom and expanding it outward. That's been my kind of, just that overview of what's happening. And that's just a small part of it. When you start to, yes, get into the future of what AI is going to be and how those kids are going to create what's going to be used for us as we get older, the adults, it's amazing. You go back to kids who are now in say just fifth grade, right? Let's do that nice 10-year-old range, right? 10 years from now, they're going to be in the middle. If college is still the same as it is now, they'll be in the middle of that process or toward the end, the junior year of it. What kind of change would that become? Like that's going to be enormous. We're talking about 10 years from now versus what we've seen happen over just the last 2 or 3.
We're going to have to stop thinking in 10 years. We're going to have
Yeah.
to start thinking in every 3 and 5 and adapt. And, these 10-year strategies that schools have for their school improvement plans and all that, I think needs to get cut back. And so that we can have quicker feedback loops, continue to iterate, because the truth is we're entering uncharted territories.
It's a great point.
Right. And so, and I understand we're dealing with kids and with students, but what's the alternative, right? What is going to happen to them? I think they'd be worse off if we don't prepare them for this digital world that we're leading to.
Yeah, it's going to be different. Now, let's be real about it, right? Are traditional schools even built to keep up with the speed that technology is changing? We've already discussed exponential technology and their impact. We've talked about the future and what that could look like in 5 or 10 years. But are we trying as a society to fix a system that's already so obsolete that we're actually jeopardizing in the preparation of those students?
Great question. Yeah, the easy answer is no. If you look at what K-12, the role of K-12 is to get kids ready for college. And then in college, they can figure out what they want to do for the rest of their life. Well, that's that kind of paradigm is starting to collapse. And I think number one, because of, college tuitions continuing to rise and, if you look at today, some plumbers, electricians, HVAC, the trades that for a very long time have been kind of looked down upon, which they shouldn't be. Some of those folks are way further ahead than your traditional college graduating students with, $70,000 in student loans. But the good news is that we're starting to wake up to it. States are starting to see now with school choice. You have charter schools, you have private schools, you have these micro schools. And so there's all sorts of different, and even the homeschooling community now has grown tremendously. So you're starting to see, maybe there's not only one way. And as a parent, I need to do my due diligence and research which is the best way for right now, I think, for my kid. Right. It may not be the big environment in a charter school or public school. It may be the micro school or, homeschooling. There's great advantages with the micro schooling and with the homeschooling, but I think some of the disadvantages are some of the resources that these larger schools can provide. And so you got to kind of see what's personal to you.
I'm glad you actually brought up the parent perspective part, because that could be something that, even teachers who are parents like myself, we struggle, with how the future is going to be because we know where we came from. We know where we are. We don't know what's going to happen. That goes along with anything. Now, a couple of years ago, we had the New York City chancellor come into our school. I run a morning news program for our school. And so he came to our school to check it out. He was on with the kids, interviewed it. And at the end, he loved it. He thought it was the greatest thing. Every school should have something like this content creation, live, kind of like real world into the school type of program. And his assistant, who brought him back down to the car afterwards, came up to tell me that, he loved it. And then he said, listen, how old are these kids? And I said, they're fifth grade, they're 10 years old. And he said, I have a friend of mine, really good friend of mine. He's got a 10-year-old and he is on TikTok and YouTube and he makes about $80,000 a year doing that. And my mouth hit the floor. He's 10, making $80,000. I mean, there are teachers out there that don't even get close to that in their career. And this kid is 10 and he's doing that. Now, this was 2 years ago. This has to be over, $100,000 by this point or more, the way we talk about, just the growth of it. And he actually said that his friend argues with the kid, because his son will say, why do I need to go to high school? Why do I need to go to college? I can make a lot of money online. I could do this easily. Why do I need to think the way they're teaching me? Because everything they're teaching me, I'm not going to use. And these are actual conversations that are happening all over the world. Yeah. That's the crazy part about it.
I think, there's one paradigm I think that really holds us down in education, and that's that we still think we're the gatekeepers of information instead of being a place where we're providing a real experience for students. I mean, if a kid wants to learn how to do Python and code in Python, they can go on YouTube. Like
yeah.
This worry about
or AI will do it for them, right? AI could write it for them now as well.
Yes, if they know and understand what computers are looking for, how to speak to computers. That's one thing that's been floating around lately, that we're not going to need to learn how to code anymore. I disagree with that totally. The language is something we may not need to learn, but we're still going to have to learn the science and the way to speak to computers.
That bottom line, that foundational how-to.
Yes. And so the really, really good programmers, I think, are now going to be unbelievable programmers, because they're going to know how to utilize AI, versus the ones that are just average programmers. They're still going to be average programmers, even if they use AI. Right. Because you still have to know what to look for. What I was getting at is that our education system, spends a lot of effort to find out what you're not good at, instead of being the place to go to figure out what you are good at, and exploit that and expose that and grow that and help students find those passions and strengths. And then we wonder why we're at such a mental health crisis in this country. We're always looking for what's wrong and lack, and you're missing this, and you're deficient in this, and you're deficient in that.
We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we'll wrap things up with Steven Iglesias. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. Teachers, are you looking for resources that spark creativity and inspire learning? Look no further than Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers. From comprehensive lesson plans and interactive lab books to engaging informational test prep passages, Highly Motivated has everything you need to keep your students motivated and excited to learn. Whether it's a quick activity or a full unit, these resources are designed to save you time and help students succeed. Highly Motivated, motivating teaching resources that engage and inspire. Search Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers today. Welcome back to Classroom Dynamics. We're talking with Steven Iglesias. So, for educators and parents listening, what's one immediate step they can take to ensure kids aren't just consuming technology, but actually creating useful things with it and building that foundation for a futuristic workforce that's closer than we actually think?
Yeah, I think this is one place where there isn't like a short method or a hack that you can, make your way in. I think STEM has been promoted in this country for the last 40, 50 years. I think where they go wrong is they try to teach you how to play baseball from a book instead of let's get a bat, let's get a ball, let's go out to the field and learn how to play. And I think that's how we need to start with getting involved with these programs, is getting kids hands on, let them fail forward, let them try and build things. And funny thing, I was reading from a book the other day. It talked about the company Lego, and they hired a consultant, and they brought this consultant in, and they said after 2 weeks of research, the consultant came back, or the group came back and said, you guys are single-handedly ruining the creativity of kids in this country. They looked at him like these guys are crazy. What do you mean? And he goes, look at every single box that goes out now. When you look at how Legos were back in the day, it was a box of blocks. You throw out the blocks and everybody creates whatever they want. Today, every box comes with a set of instructions of how to build exactly what that is designed to be, whether it be an Iron Man mask or a Luke Skywalker or whatever the case may be. And so we got to let our kids create. And when we're not even in school, even at home in general, let them build, let them create out of use that creative muscle to build whatever it is that they need to accomplish. I think one question that we always ask, or we got asked when we were little, is what do you want to be when you grow up? I think that question that we need to start asking is, what problem do you want to solve? And let that kid's brain start turning.
I love that. What problem do you want to solve, instead of saying, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because look, you're right. It's true. We used to say that to the kids. What would you like to be? Would you like to be? And the adults would say, would you like to be a doctor? Would you like to be a lawyer? Right? Those are the first two that came out of everyone's mouth. It wasn't anything else. Now it could be, we have so many issues. What can you solve?
Yeah. And I mean, at this point, again, there's no cookie cutter approach. You just got to go out there and try it out. And, lack of information should not be an obstacle. I mean, it's literally out there. It's everywhere. Finding the right information. And that's a skill set. Another like digital literacy skill set that these kids are going to need is how to decipher what's valid, where it's coming from, all of that. And especially with AI, it's even scarier.
You're right. Listen, this has been a great conversation. We hit on so many amazing things, and you really did bring out a lot of great points. I love the Lego one too, because it is true. We do need to let kids be a little bit more creative and a little bit more open, and kind of just say, go, right? Just go. Try it. See what happens. You're certainly leading the change and transforming education for the future. So I thank you for that. With AI, robotics, esports, you're helping schools bridge the gap between today's classrooms and tomorrow's career. The world is evolving, right? And education should evolve, and it really does need to, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Adam. And if I can leave you with this, in my case, and this is a little bit personal to me. When I was in middle and high school, I was actually pushed away from technology because I didn't have the right math scores. And at 35 years old is when I realized, because I started reading about it and getting involved and getting hands-on with it, that I really do have a passion for this. And so there's plenty of other kids that now that the world is moving digital, it's not just, programming. It's a lot more. And to be exposed at a much earlier age, we're doing a disservice not to expose these kids.
Steven, before we go, tell everyone where they can go to find out more about you and some of your socials, where they can follow you.
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, Steven Iglesias, and also on X, Stevo2113.
Definitely follow him. Great posts. I got to tell you, great thinking. It will make you think totally different. I love it. For those of you who have been listening, thank you for tuning in today, and make sure that you share what you've learned or any takeaways or reflections that you've had, and tag us on X at Class Dynamics or Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. You can also find out all of our links, including information about our sponsors, on our link tree at Classroom Dynamics. We always look forward to hearing your thoughts on our episodes and sharing the different ways in which you're using what you've learned. You can also help support Classroom Dynamics with as little as $3 a month at classroomdynamicspodcast.buzzsprout.com. Once again, I'd like to thank Steven Iglesias for joining us today on Classroom Dynamics. Fantastic conversation. Thanks for the time. And here's to a monumental change that's certainly in motion. Be that disruptor.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Thank you so much for having me.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of Classroom Dynamics, where knowledge and inspiration meets innovation. I hope you've enjoyed today's discussion and found it both insightful and uplifting. As always, my goal is to provide you with practical strategies, engaging stories, and powerful insights that can fuel your motivation as an educator. I believe when knowledge and inspiration do come together, incredible things can happen in your classroom. And for all of you who think it's too late to strengthen your craft, I challenge you to make it your mission to do so. You've worked hard to get to where you are today, and it's never too late to infuse new life into your work. So why not make today that day to do so? I'm Adam Todd, and you've been listening to Classroom Dynamics, a teacher podcast. You can follow Classroom Dynamics on X at Class Dynamics and on Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. If you haven't already, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'll be back soon with more captivating conversations, inspiring stories, and strategies that you can implement into your everyday routines. Until then, keep igniting that spark in your classroom and never stop believing in the incredible impact that you have as an educator. You're more powerful and inspirational than you think. If you like today's episode, you'll love our episode Preparing Educators for AI-Driven Classrooms. We sit down with Dr. Dwayne Wood to unpack how AI is reshaping education from student engagement to ethical challenges. Don't miss this insightful conversation on balancing cutting-edge technology with the human touch in teaching.
In the service, we always were the idea of mission focused. What's the goal? And I'm putting all my effort to achieve that. To me, it's the same thing in education. I got a learning outcome. And that learning outcome has been vetted, right? It's an applicable skill or knowledge or attribute that's required for some form of task or something in the real world, either in the world of work or just in life. So I need to be able to adapt what I'm doing within the classroom to achieve that outcome.